Have you heard? I think you will have done. Have you heard of marketing being seen as the colouring in department?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it personally for quite some time now. Do you think that this is something that's going to stick in this industry, or at least from the outside looking in, that marketing is only there for the, I'm going to say, creative, fluffy brand stuff and nothing else?
I think any agency, branding, marketing, branding maybe a little bit if you're doing packaging is a little bit different, but any service-based agency is essentially there to bill time. It's how you communicate your expertise in where that time goes. And I think the movement towards transparency on where that time is being spent and the capability of then being able to show the returns for that is pulling that perception out of the shadows a little bit. And I think there are more and more situations cropping up, Coinbase, where marketing agencies are starting to stand up for themselves a little bit more in that respect. I think the last 5 years, a lot of brands have commoditized agencies' services, whereas now I think agencies have got the forum to back themselves a little bit more and show the value of the services. It's becoming easier to demonstrate that that expertise has an impact, which results in pounds and pence. Therefore, perception doesn't really mean shit because you can show the value.
Yeah. I think from my understanding as well, I've posted about this on LinkedIn a couple of times, that I get a lot of in-house marketers jumping on that discussion as well, and getting their points across and their experiences across quite passionately. That I don't think this exists in just agency client relationships and that in that direction. I think it's internal marketing teams having that battle with other teams, other departments that really do chuck stuff their way, thinking that it's just a creative department. That's all that they're there for. And I think marketing struggles personally being in the C-suite at these large organisations where the C-suite had been made up of exactly who you'd expect: CEO, COO, CTO, CFO, all those. And the CMO, I find from experience, has been quite interchangeable, really, and not consistently thereabouts. And I wonder if the perception internally, marketing almost needs to do its own branding exercise of itself, because having those conversations that I've had, it's not just in agencies that this marketing, obviously that's what we do, it's our bread and butter, we're a marketing agency, but internal teams are struggling with that as well versus other departments. And I don't know what the crusade needs to look like, but it sounds like, and it seems like there needs to be a bit of a rebranding exercise, which is quite ironic, for marketing in-house as well. And I guess I've seen that as well internally, client side, my early career experience, that the wider marketing department was so sliced up into mini teams. Some would you wouldn't approach certain teams with anything numbers based, for example. Not that commercial mindset is just like, well, don't talk to that team about numbers. They just do the colouring in. That, I mean, it's a few years ago now, but it's happening internally, client side as well. Have you got any ideas as to what marketers themselves can do internally? Because I think then it'll transpose onto better agency relationships as well that these client-side marketers are having.
I think if you look at the structure of an agency and the services that sit within an agency, and going back to like SEO in 1998, the perception around SEO was that you could put a load of keywords in and you'd rank for whatever you wanted, essentially. Fast forward to now, the amount of different disciplines that sit within SEO as a service is vast. And I think that communicating that back and being open about not only the expertise within each sub-service, within a service, if you like, but also then how that impacts overall strategy. If you look at it from a strategy level, strategy is the overarching thing, and the services are tools, if you like, to achieve a strategy. And some businesses are still finding it difficult to perceive that value. I think there's a lot of agencies and there's a movement at the moment for writing that, essentially, knowing your worth. I think even on a solo, on a freelance basis, knowing your value and how you're able to deliver your expertise to tie into a overall strategy is becoming more and more commonplace. There are going to be brands that have an old school mindset that never jump on board with that way of thinking, but I think we're naturally moving towards that. Having an agency that has the capability of delivering expertise across any channel, for example, when a new channel crops up, TikTok, how long's TikTok been going? 4 years, 3 years? Being able to take your strategy and knowledge and your expertise and deploy it against a new platform, that is becoming more commonplace because of technology. And I think that in itself is going to help towards reinforcing the value that an agency full of specialists is capable of delivering at a strategy level. I also think there's a lot of conversation around what you were saying there about the CMO at board level. That's becoming, there's a lot of big organisations that are reintroducing CMOs and bringing them in at board level because they know the importance of it. And if a business doesn't have that way of thinking and that mindset now, it's already too late. You're already behind, in my opinion.
But for me, there's a fundamental. Why are we asking that? Why am I going to ask this question now? It shows that there's a fundamental issue. Why is the CMO position dicked around with so much? Again, running theme here, but I've posted about this on LinkedIn before. McDonald's been my case study for this discussion, and again, people have jumped on the discussion, so it's clearly kind of like a sore point for many people. Why do you think that? Let's take the McDonald's, the real life case study. Why do you think they were so in and out with the CMO's representation? I think it was a global CMO and then a UK one that they were dicking around with. Where do you think that's stemming from? Like, why are they so fleeting with marketing? Do you think they pull the plug because they're not absolutely convinced and then the shit hits the fan and they go, oh, in hindsight we can see the value that we're getting from having that representation around the table?
I think it comes from arrogance and lack of knowledge. I think a lot of brands and a lot of businesses at a certain size are frightened of things that they don't know.
Yeah.
And you bring a CMO in to not to know intricately every service that sits within marketing, but you bring a CMO in to understand what your marketing is delivering for you. And then you trust that CMO to validate any partners that you work with. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that agencies are all angels. There are agencies that do things badly, but there are also agencies that are awesome at what they do and that deliver a hell of a lot of value. And I think it does come back to arrogance, not understanding the full value that someone that has such vast expertise can deliver for you on your behalf. Yes, you have to put budget against it, but almost every marketing activity is designed to deliver positive returns. So it doesn't make sense. And I'm obviously on the agency side, and I'm going to evangelize around the value that marketing can deliver. Yeah. But it is an old school mentality, and it is arrogant. And I think it's also a victim of agencies that have done things badly, and a lot of brands have been stung. It's been a dark art, whereas you can't do that now.
No.
You have to have the level of transparency, and you have to report the results in a certain way, and you have to be able to have the brand sat on your side of the table along the way to educate them, so that conversations become easier and easier. It's not I don't think it's a difficult equation, but
It's not, but we're seeing still to this day press releases. That's what I find out about CMO responsibilities being pulled and then reinstated at boardroom level at the likes of McDonald's. It's clearly still happening with that. And I agree with you, with that old school mindset. McDonald's, biggest brand, one of the biggest brands that anyone would ever think of when you ask that question, global. You know, who do you think of? Huge brands. So obviously the power of advertising for them is humongous, but from a marketing perspective, it's just so surprising that a brand that is so visible would be messing around with marketing consistently at that level. It's just, I don't know. I mean, we could go on and on about it, but I think we shall park it. However, it's still going to happen, I think. And I think both sides of the table can do more. I think agencies, suppliers, relationships, external relationships that these brands have can do a little bit more from the outside into those brands, and the other way around as well. But for me, it needs to change. We need to see marketing across the board, given the value. I mean, look at the last 2 years. I know we're going to keep referencing this, but everyone will be bloody referencing it. So
it's a culture shift. The last 2 years
Exactly.
have been a culture shift in a lot of ways.
But, you know, we saw it from clients pausing, like everyone did, kind of in that, the news hit that we're all going home and whatever. That budgets were slashed, stop spending, whilst we all figured it out, and rightly so, it's understandable. But marketing was one at first where you saw budgets to be dropped and paused. That to me,
Yeah, because agencies are, from a balance sheet perspective, agencies, when you look at it, are an external spend. And if you're an employer, your responsibility lies with your employees and your profitability as a business. So I can understand where panic is in it. It's like
Short term.
the main thing you would knee jerk into pausing budgets. But no one handled the pandemic terribly because no one knew how to react to it. But I think the brands that now are doing well are the brands that continued to market through the pandemic, because they adapted to the market and they didn't take the foot off the gas. I think there's businesses, certainly in my experience over the last 2 years, that we've worked with that took the foot off the gas a little bit. No judgment on that, because you've got to do what you've got to do, but the exponential growth and success that brands that did invest throughout that period have seen proves exactly the point that we've just been discussing for the last 15 minutes. It's about not having the arrogance to not commit. You don't have to go in and understand every nut and bolt, but you have to allow enough trust in the people that are delivering for you that they're going to do the job. And like I said before, I'm not saying all agencies are whiter than white, but if you've got the right partner in place, it makes sense.